Welcome to Race Through the States. I'm Jaden Jefferson, your host of this weekly objective presidential election podcast. And the big story this week was the vice presidential debate. It was a far cry from the Trump-Harris debate we saw, which will likely be the only Trump-Harris debate we see this election cycle. Now, this VP debate, the focus was definitely policy. You didn't see a lot of personal attacks. And in fact, a lot of people pointed out that these two Midwestern candidates really showed some Midwestern kindness. It's something I certainly was paying attention to as I watched from my oversized Midwest furniture. It was an experience being a Midwesterner and watching this all unfold. So to kind of recap the big moments here, definitely one thing that both had to go into this debate doing was getting their name recognition. Neither of these two have held a national office, and that can be a good and a bad thing. It can be a bad thing in terms of name recognition, of course, but in terms of being a good thing, they have an opportunity, a rare opportunity, to define themselves for the national audience. And I'm sure they had a lot of time to think about how they did that, because just as Trump and Harris prepared for their debate, I'm sure these two definitely thought about what they want Americans to think about them. For Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, who is Vice President Kamala Harris's running mate, he definitely showed off a lot of the qualities that actually got him to that position. Democrats for the longest time have had an issue with being viewed as elitist, West Coast and East Coast. But Walz is from the Midwest. There were some times during the debate where he actually pointed to the camera and looked the camera in the eye and tried to make his points. And that was something that I think Democrats have been looking for in a vice presidential candidate and even a presidential candidate. And so he definitely was trying to make the case that the Democratic Party is a party for the average person. One issue the Harris campaign has really struggled to poll well on is the economy. That post-COVID inflation that hit, it really created an issue for the Biden administration. And many voters are looking at this election as a referendum on the Biden administration, even though Vice President Harris is now the candidate. And looking at the Trump-Vance ticket, one moment that was really surprising to see was Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, former President Trump's running mate, actually admit that Republicans have a trust issue when it comes to reproductive rights. The polling shows that that is by far the Harris campaign's issue. And he even said that Republicans are going to have to work to regain the trust of the American people on that issue. Just looking at the two candidates and their presence on stage, you can tell for Ohio Senator J.D. Vance that this wasn't exactly new territory for him, while Governor Walz took some time to get his stride. And one of his moments during the debate that really stood out was confronting Senator Vance on the issue of January 6th. Now, many Republicans are trying to look into the future, and that's kind of how Vance responded during the debate. He really did not want to talk about that issue, but Walz continued to push that issue and try to get an answer on that issue. And one highlight from Vance's presence on stage was the fact that he was doing exactly what Republicans would have preferred former President Trump to do during that first debate, which was make it all about the economy as well as a referendum on Vice President Kamala Harris. You really have seen, since President Biden dropped out of the race, this tie of Republicans putting Vice President Kamala Harris as someone who's responsible for how things have went during Biden's term. And that is the approach we did see from Vance to a lot of the issues that were discussed. And of course, after every debate, a big question that's out there is, who won? But from my perspective, the American people won. Because you'll see that there is frustration because a lot of the time, a lot of the politics of this election have been driven by personal attacks. But this debate was civil, and these two actually debated the issues and could actually acknowledge when they agreed with one another on something. And that is something that was really refreshing to see, because there obviously is a lot of tension in the country right now. People are polarized. And to see a debate where the attacks weren't personal but policy-based, I think that gives us hope for the future, because these conversations and these debates can happen without personal attacks being what drives who wins or who loses. I definitely was looking to see some of the commentary from both sides of the aisle here, and obviously both are praising their candidate, of course. But I just say, as an objective observer, Americans definitely got to see something that they needed to see and hear, which was policy debate. We are now less than 40 days away from Election Day, and so there will be a lot of appeals to voters in that time, but we're not getting any more debates as of right now. So this was pretty much it. And now the campaigns are going to have to work to get those swing states in the bag. And that's going to be a whole process. Because one thing I talk about a lot on this podcast is the fact that, yes, every vote matters. But in this election, it's all about swing states. Those are where the campaigns are actually focusing their attention toward, because those states could go either in their favor or in their opponent's favor. And they're going to spend some time and money there. So a lot of ad buys, a lot of stops. Pennsylvania, a huge state for the campaigns. Another state that's huge, Michigan. And we are seeing that those states, they're hitting pretty frequently there because they want those electoral college votes. So this podcast is going to continue and document this election 2024 campaign, but going to be a lot more to talk about because now we don't have debates. We just have speeches and policies. I'm Jaden Jefferson. Thanks so much for listening to Race Through the States. This has been Race Through the States, a production of Jaden Jefferson Report Studios. Tune in every Friday for the latest on election 2024. And continue the conversation over on social media at Jaden, Jaden_reports on Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Threads. I'm also on Facebook, Jaden Jefferson Reports. Have a great day.